Welcome to the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Schuknecht, and today's guest is Monica Parkin, author of Overcoming Awkward. Let's get into it. Hello, Monica. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Beyond the Bestseller podcast. I'd like to start out by having you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Monica Parkin. We were just talking about, I haven't done a podcast in a while. I'm feeling a little awkward. So it's good that the name of my book is Overcoming Awkward, Introverts Guide to Networking, Marketing, and Sales. And I am really excited to see you doing this project and really appreciate the invite on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, so you and I go way back, right? Like a couple of years. I read your book, and so you have this book, Overcoming Awkward, and I did a review for it. But when I started this podcast, you were one of the first women that came to my mind that I wanted to have on because the purpose of this podcast is that not every book is written to be a bestseller or to sell a million copies, but a lot of people write a book with a special purpose in mind. And so I thought of you because I am very familiar with your book and thought it was perfect for the audience. So tell me a little bit about why you wrote Overcoming Awkward.
Yeah, interesting story, actually. It was the middle of COVID, and I was like, oh, wow, I've got some free time. I should write that book I've always wanted to write. And it turned out that the book I thought I always wanted to write is not at all the book that I wrote. But when I started writing the book, one of the questions, it was actually like a 30-day writing challenge, and where they email you a different question every day, and okay, today you're gonna figure out what the topic's going to be and blah blah blah. But and so they give you these leading questions to try to figure out where each chapter is going to go. And the first question was, what is something you've overcome in your life? Like, what is something that you've gotten to the other side of that you can, just like you, share some value with your audience? And I thought about it, and I'm like, it's a introverted, socially awkward, don't know what to do when I walk in a room. Now I'm an entrepreneur. How the heck do I navigate this? That was what I had to overcome. So I thought, you know what? Let's write about that. And it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Yeah. I love what you talk about in the book because it speaks so much to me. Because, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I walk into a room and I feel awkward. Like I don't, that socially awkward thing. Like I don't know how to talk to people, how to just like put myself out there. And your book really just encourages people to do that, to put yourself out there, to do things that maybe are outside of your comfort zone. And it spoke so much to me because I constantly force myself to do things that are outside of my comfort zone, and it feels awkward. But I feel like that's the only way to continue growing and to, it like for your scenario, you're growing your business, and this is kind of like that tool that's helping you meet new people, network, and it's so important for all of us to do that in our professional lives, but it can be really hard. So, how did you kind of go from feeling that awkwardness to being able to put yourself out there and to network for your business? And I'd like you to talk about your business too, and kind of why
For
you
sure.
network.
Yeah. We'll get there. Yeah. So I think it's two things. So one is recognizing that there's always going to be a bit of discomfort. Like whenever you do something, obviously outside of your comfort zone, there's going to be like a bit of discomfort. There's nothing that I'm going to do that's new that I've never done before that's not going to feel a little weird at first. But the second part, I think, was just learning how to do it in a way that makes me feel comfortable, that makes me feel safe, that makes me feel not totally uncomfortable and crawling out of my skin and exhausted when I come home from an event because I've completely drained my social battery. So part of it was getting out of my comfort zone because I had to survive, to eat, to make money. And the other part of it, I think, was figuring out how to be authentically me, because it was the not being authentic me that was making me feel awkward and uncomfortable. And then when I get to
Mm,
show up as me, all of a sudden it's easy because I don't feel like I have to speak another language, right? Yeah.
yeah. So say more about that. What's the difference between the way you were showing up before and showing up as you? Like, how did you kind of, I don't know, how did
Yeah.
you navigate that? Like figuring out how to be authentically you?
Yeah, well, it was for sure a journey, and if you want the whole journey, you got to listen to the TED Talk or read the book or whatever. But one of the stories I tell is going to this first networking event, which is like one of those Chamber of Commerce events where you got all these little tiny cocktail tables and everyone's standing around and like walking into that and going, heck no, I'm getting out of here. I'm going back to my car, freaking out. My coworkers show up, I gotta go in. But doing what I learned in university, we had marketing class. And if you want to get a good grade in marketing class, well, okay, so there's marketing and then there was a unit on networking. And the unit on networking was basically make up a bunch of cards, go to an event, hand out as many cards as you could. The person who came back with the least amount of cards for yourself and the most from other people, like got the best grades. So I'm like, okay, well, I did this in networking class. I can do this. And so I did. I walked around the room. I told everyone my name. I did all the things that make me uncomfortable. Came home and I've got this handful of cards and I'm like, what do I do with these now? And I end up throwing them out, right? And
Right.
as I'm throwing them out, I'm like,
Don't we
oh my
all?
God, oh my gosh, they're throwing out, that means they're throwing my cards out too, right? Like that means nothing worked. And so that was when I was like, you know what, there has to be a better way. And that was when I started like reaching out to people in my industry that were really successful and doing really well and finding surprisingly that many of them were actually introverts that look like extroverts, but in fact they are introverts. They're also shy, they're socially awkward, and they were like, you got to figure out like what's authentic you. And so one of the things I tell people now in terms of at least just those events is when they say which ones do I go to? Well, go to the ones like where you feel comfortable at, where you're excited to
Hmm.
go to. So for me, I don't go to the events with the little cocktail tables if I can possibly avoid it. But I'll go to like a women's business network dinner where we sit down, we eat dinner, sit around a table. I get to talk to other women. I get to hear a speaker. It feels comfortable. It feels safe. Or, maybe it's volunteering at my kids' high school doing something, but it's things that spark my passion, things I'm excited about. It's not just going and meeting random strangers. It's going with a purpose. And I think that changes it from awkward and uncomfortable to I'm kind of excited about this.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. I've noticed that over the last few weeks I've been networking a lot and as I'm building my own business and learning, how to, you know, kind of learning to network with people and figuring out what makes sense for me to do. But I have learned that, getting involved in some women's circles have been really great and just kind of learning which of those events I feel most comfortable in. So that's a good reminder of just that's exactly, you're on the right track doing that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And then when you do join these events or join these groups, like finding the committees that you can sit on, because I always tell people like committees are like networking gold because you get to sit down with a group of women. Maybe you spend 6 months with them, maybe you spend a year with them. There's this project, this common goal you're all working towards. They get to see what your work ethic is, they get to see what you're good at. Incidentally, they also get to see if you're a control freak or a micromanager. So, like, if you don't play well in groups, that might not be the way you want to network. But if you do play well with others and you are coachable and you pull your weight and you have time to do it, like, what a fantastic way to network. Because there's so many
Yeah.
times I've sat down with a group of women or men or whoever, and you get to the end of that project and, like, you've got some good friends in that group now. You've got people and you know what they're about, they know what you're about. And it's such a easy, comfortable way to network. And that's something I think of networking now. I used to think it was just this event or that event. It's literally every single interaction you have every single day with every person. That is your
Yeah.
networking, whether it's the guy at the McDonald's counter or your real estate agent, whoever it is. Like every time you show up and talk to someone, you're making an impression and you can choose whether that's a good one or a bad one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I went to so a couple weeks ago I went to this it was a networking event I found for introverted women. I forget what it was called exactly. I'll find it and I'll put it in the show notes. But I had come across it and I was like, I'm gonna try this, So I went to it and like the first like 5 minutes, or maybe not 5 minutes, first couple of minutes though, I just sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why did I sign up for this? And I was having this like panic moment. And then it ended up, they broke us into these groups of just small groups of, I think it was 3 people. And you got like 10 minutes and you each told each other who you were, what you were doing, and she had kind of like a list of things for us to cover. And I made friends in that group and, we connected right away on LinkedIn. and then I was so energized after, and I was like, yeah, like that kind of thing is so great to do. And it was great for me because I am introverted. And so not having to travel somewhere, go to an event, like you were saying, like a cocktail event or something where it just feels awkward. It did feel awkward online even, but like that was easy to get over pretty quickly and then connect with the women in the group. So it was really great. And I think I encourage people to try that kind of thing, even if it feels like, why am I doing this? Because that was how I
Yeah,
felt.
or book clubs, right? Where you've all read the book
Yes.
and then you're sitting and you're talking about it. There's some great business book clubs, and that's where I've met like some really amazing connections. And then one of the first networking groups I ever joined that I absolutely loved and it made me want to keep coming back, but it was kind of like a feedback type thing. So there's 10 people, and every week someone pitches a new idea or like, this is what I want to do with my business, or this is a challenge I'm having. So they present on it, and then you go around the table and everyone gives them a little bit of feedback. So it's it's very comfortable. It's participatory. You get to hear everyone's thoughts. You get to know each other, but not in a go shake hands kind of a way, right? In a really
Yeah.
organic way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so great. So I don't think we've gotten into yet what your actual business is. So you mentioned being an entrepreneur. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so well, certainly my first foray into being an entrepreneur was as a mortgage broker. I'm still a mortgage broker. I mentor a team of mortgage brokers. I've also somehow along the way become a public speaking coach. So somewhere along the way, I learned to be a public speaker. The first time I did it, it felt awkward and uncomfortable, and I was terrified. And I realized though that there's this misconception that introverts are not good public speakers, but the reality is it's like one of the easiest things you can do as an introvert. Like no one can interrupt you. You get to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You can practice it ahead of time. You can get super comfortable with it and you can amplify your reach, right? Like you can go to a party with 200 people. There's no way you'll talk to all 200 people at once, but you get up on a stage and talk to 200 people. By the
Hmm.
time 20 minutes is over, they know you. They know if they know, like, or trust you. They know if they resonate with you. You run into
Yeah.
them later and you might not know them, but they know you. It's like networking on steroids, and as an introvert, it requires very little social battery.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good way to look at it. I'll have to remind myself of that next time I have a speaking engagement because I'm still on the side of being like very nervous and it's very stressful for me, but I like looking at it like that.
But here you are doing a podcast, right?
I
So,
know. I know. But I totally take that standpoint of I will force myself to do things like this that feel very uncomfortable. And I've had so many people tell me like, "Oh, you're such a natural in your videos." And I'm like, that is not how it feels. But apparently I'm fooling everyone, so that's good.
that's awesome. Yeah.
So how does the book and the speaking fit into your business and what you do? You said you accidentally became a speaking coach. So and the book was kind of a project you were working on.
Seriously, everything I do is by accident, Kelly, and then it just turns into something. But they've all amplified my business in different ways, right? So the
Yeah.
book kind of led to speaking because I wrote the book, and then people invite you to be on podcasts, and then, oh, could you talk about the book or could you talk about this chapter? So then I had to work on my speaking skills because all I knew how to do was read an index card and from 4-H or high school. So my first few speaking attempts were not ideal, and I was like, okay, I got to work on this. But the more I worked on it, the more I enjoyed it. But the two really go hand in hand, and then writing a book gives you this kind of amazing credibility. So often people will reach out to me for business. They'll call me for a mortgage or for speaking or whatever. And my first
Hmm.
question is always, how did you find me? And it's usually, well, I looked up a bunch of people, but you wrote a book, or you did a TEDx, or I read your book. And like I've also had people just like, I read your book, can I join your team? Because they read the book and it you feel like you get to know someone after you read their book.
Yeah.
So the book was really a big, or I just did it for me because it was something I wanted to do, but it's turned out to amplify my career and my business in ways like I couldn't have even ever imagined. The
Yeah.
credibility, the compliment, the random people that email and go, "Oh my gosh, I read your book. Can I get 20 copies for my office, or can you come visit our book club?" Like the relationships that you Well, just like you and I now know each other, we never would
Yeah.
have without that book or even that relationship with my editor or other people. It's just brought these opportunities that I actually couldn't have even imagined. I just wanted to say I wrote a book and it turned into so much more. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great story. Yeah, I read your book, reviewed it, then I had you come to my company at the time and do a webinar, at least one. I don't remember if we did more than one, but we did a webinar, which again I can link to that in the show notes as well. But you came and talked to accountants about overcoming awkward and putting themselves out there, because in that industry especially, that is a challenge. A lot of accountants want to have their heads down, be, they're introverted, want to be in a quiet office and not have any attention on them. But for building their business, it's important to put yourself out there. And so, yeah, so you came in and did that. And then, of course, I thought about you today, and how, or thought about you for this podcast, and how your message is so impactful for women. I mean, for anyone, it doesn't have to be women, but for the women who are tuning in, because I think it's hard for us to put ourselves out there and to, network and to make time for those kinds of things. But for anyone who's growing a business, it's so important to do it. So yeah, so I think the one thing I want people to know is, if that is a challenge for you, read the book. But besides reading the book, what is your number one tip for people to overcome awkward and uh and do the thing, whatever that is?
Yeah. Can you see my brain thinking right now? You know what I would say that I tell people, because people say it's too late for me or I'm too old. You know what? Like, I did this in my late 40s. Like I was almost 50. And honestly, before I became an entrepreneur, before I wrote a book, like I probably had a circle of like three friends. I had no business acquaintances. I knew nobody. I wasn't involved in anything. I went from this total nobody who knew nobody to somebody who knows a lot of people and has a lot of connections, and from someone who hated that and would avoid it at all costs. Like I literally wouldn't let my kids have like go over to their friend's house because that would mean I'd have to have their friends over and then I'd have to talk to their mother, and it was like, oh my gosh, like this is too much. To someone who, like, I genuinely enjoy getting to know people. Like I've now that I'm past the discomfort of it, like, not that I'm ever going to be the person that'll walk into like a cocktail party and feel totally comfortable, but like I really love having like this conversation with you, and I love learning about people, and I love connecting with people, and
Yeah.
it's never too late, I guess, is my thing. Like you can be 50, you can be 60, you can be 70, it doesn't matter. My grandma got her bachelor's degree at 85, but like it's never too late
Wow.
to try on something uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah. That was like a whole other story that we need
That's
to
a
get
whole
into.
other story. I told you I'd go off on a tangent.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like I'm two steps behind you, and maybe that's because of your book. Like maybe the influence that your book has had on me, and just kind of, following along in your journey. But when I left my job in 2017, I had zero professional network, and I had nothing. Like everything we did in the company was just internal. We didn't do anything outside of the company. And so from then till now, I have just put myself out there. And I think that was part of like why I felt like I just needed people to, not like people to know me, but I don't know. I just needed that connection with people, and have grown my network so much where there was no purpose to it. I wasn't trying to get anything out of anyone or vice versa. It was just getting to know people professionally. And now, now that I have currently left my most recent job and am building my business, that professional network is so important. And just having those people in my life who, again, not necessarily trying to get anything out of them or vice versa, but just reaching out to people and talking to people on this journey for me, and learning from them and getting ideas from them. And, it's been really, really great. And I'm so grateful for that network that I've developed kind of accidentally. But again, I just think it's so important to have that, and to have those people in your life, that community.
Yeah, and what a great point. Like you did such a good job of building those connections and getting to know people that when I saw you post that you had changed, that you're doing something different, I was genuinely like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for her. I want to know what she's doing. Like, what's the next step?" So, like you built enough of a connection with me that I wasn't just like, "Oh, that's interesting, keep scrolling." I was like, "Oh, what's Kelly doing now?" So, and
Yeah.
that's what happens when you build genuine connections is people really want, and you feel connected to other people and you have this amazing support system around you of people that genuinely care what you're up to.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was something that, again, like 10 years ago, I didn't even think I was capable of that type of building that type of relationship online with people. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many people in my life. And so, yeah, I just encourage people, if you don't feel like you have that, to join networking groups, to, I can't even really say, to engage with people on LinkedIn, like whatever, however you can, um, interact with people, I think online, you can start building those
Yeah.
relationships.
I'll share
Yeah.
one more tip. I know we're probably out of time here, but
Go
one more
ahead.
tip that I always share when I talk to people that I always forget about, and I kind of stumbled across it by accident, and I talk about it in my book though, is people notice the people that notice them, right? So I make a
Mm,
point now when I see someone doing something really cool, like a few months ago, I was like, okay, Monica, you got to get on TikTok. Like, you've got to do it. And I'm scrolling through TikTok and I'm like, oh my gosh, this one guy, he's killing it. He's doing so good. Like, and I wanted to be like jealous and be like, I'm not going to do this. But I'm like, no, Monica, you got to tell this guy how awesome he is at TikTok. So I like open my DMs. I send him a message. I'm like, dude, I don't know you, but I just want to tell you, like, you're just slaying it. Like, you have such a great channel and I'm interested. It's engaging. And like, I'm a little bit jealous. A couple minutes later, ding, ding, someone's checking out my profile on TikTok. Half an hour later, oh, look, someone's on my website from Brampton. This guy's from Brampton,
mm,
right? Forget all about it. 2 months later, I get an email. Hey, I read your book. I wonder if I can get like 10, 15 copies for the office. We're going to do it for our book club. So, like, all I did is I noticed this guy was doing something. Like, you don't have to be, hey, I'd like to go for coffee. You can just be like, and don't tell not awesome people they're not awesome, by the way. So, like, don't go around telling people
right.
that they're great when they're not. But if you see someone that's doing something really cool and you like it, like, just tell them. Worst
Yeah.
case scenario, they never reach out. Best case scenario, you started the spark of a new connection.
Yeah. That's such a great tip. And just being genuine. And yeah, I read that in, oh, I can't think of what the book was. Another book recently was just saying, like, as you're building your business, pour yourself into those people that are noticing, like the people who are noticing you, even if you're getting nothing out of it, it's those interactions that start to lead to more interactions that start to, yeah, it's
Mhm.
that cycle that you're just perpetuating by, by just engaging with those people who, it might feel like two people, right? Like at first, but like those two people can turn into however many. I mean, how many people are reading your book now because of that? Like those little individual people who are getting the word out there for you because you spent a few minutes acknowledging them or engaging with them. So that's a great tip. I am going to find you on TikTok. I will I'll share.
Not good.
No, no, no. Okay, not maybe not TikTok, but where so where's the best place for somebody to reach out to you, whether they want you to come and speak, they want to get information about, well, I can put information about your book in the show notes, but if they want more from you to come do a webinar, whatever, what is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I do have a TikTok channel, but it is a work in progress. That's the
Okay,
next
got
thing
it.
I'm probably on. But yeah, you can just find me at monicaparkin.ca. You can reach out to me there. You can find a link to my TEDx talk, the book, like literally everything's there. All my social media channels, just monicaparkin.ca. Super easy.
That's great. I'm glad you brought up the TEDx talk. I wanted to talk to you about that, but we are out of time. But I will link to it in the show notes also so people can see it because I have watched it and you are amazing. So I hope that more people can discover you through this podcast and read your book and watch your TED talk and maybe have you come and do a presentation for their group. So thank you so much, Monica, for coming on. And yeah, I will include everything in the show notes. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you. I'm gonna have to add this to my new podcast favorites list. I think it's gonna be amazing, and I'm looking looking forward to listening to some more episodes. So thank you.
Looking for a community of women writers to support and inspire you on your journey? Join the Author Power Circle. Connect weekly with fellow authors, stay accountable, and move your book forward in an encouraging community. Learn more at kellyshuckneck.com.